the long-standing monarchy of the United Kingdom, unbroken and unweathered. But what would happen if King Charles III were to suddenly pass away? Perhaps after so many years, we would finally see the British monarchy unravel? Up first on the list, we have the possibility of underground societies overthrowing the British ruling class and claiming the United Kingdom as their own. Did you know that there are a multitude of underground tunnels and cave systems right below the noses of the general British public? Perhaps the most infamous of which belongs to the Hellfire Club. If that name sounds familiar, you are either an incredibly well-versed historian or just a big fan of Stranger Things. Sci-fi series aside, the Hellfire Club was actually a fraternity founded in 1737 in Ireland. The group is said to have been dedicated to hedonism, Satanism, and standing against the British rule. Not only that, but it has been rumored that among these self-claimed brothers were many members of high society, including none other than Benjamin Franklin, aka Mr. 100. While claims have been made by the original founders and participants that the club was merely a satirical group of like-minded individuals with a gritty sense of humor, many believe its origins to be much more sinister. And although the group was supposed to have disbanded in the early 1740s, many believe it is still around today, waiting for the perfect moment, a crack in British rule so that its members may rise up and claim the country as their own. Remember, it wouldn't be just a group of ragtag teens leading the charge, but many well-known and highly respected members of society too. So, if it's not a medieval 17th century group of wingnuts, maybe it's a modern one. Because another totally plausible dark happening that might take place after we wave goodbye to the third Charles in charge is a modern group of extremist thinkers deciding to seize the opportunity and attempt to topple life in the UK as we know it. Whether it be done through recruitment propaganda, creating a mob mentality uprising, or acts of terror utilizing brute force as an approved method of negotiation, the possibility of watching the UK fall to the hands of such sinister destruction is not something that I want to spend much more time thinking about, so let's move on. From thinking to sinking. In case you haven't guessed it, I'm talking about the sinking of the British economy. Economic collapse, downfall, decline, do you get the picture? This would of course not be in the best interest of the people residing in the UK, but also anyone who holds the British pound, anyone who has stock in British companies, and anyone who owns real estate in the country as well. Not only that, but these effects would go far beyond a personal level, affecting the economic state of countries who do high volumes of trade with the UK as either buyers or sellers. Honestly, we are already dealing with a startling amount of global economic downfall, so let's really hope that this doesn't happen. On a lighter note, if the king were to die, Prince William would immediately take the throne. On a less light note, what if William turns out to be like a real-life Geoffrey Baratheon? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna need you to take a quick break, watch about 70 hours and 14 minutes of television, and then return to this video. But I guess if you don't want to do that, I will give you the cliff notes. Geoffrey is a hedonistic, sociopathic brat who deserved exactly what he got. He was also king in the Game of Thrones. But there is not a person on earth who deserves to go through the absolute hellfire, see what I did there, of having a king that is anything remotely close to what Geoffrey was. So really hoping that that doesn't happen either. Alright guys, keep up, because in this next point I am going to hit you with another Game of Thrones reference, just one more time I promise, and then we'll move on. So if you are one of the few people who hasn't seen Game of Thrones and you picked option B from my last point, I will again give you the rundown. Cersei is Joffrey's mom from the show, equally as villainous, equally as messed up, and equally deserved what she got as well. When Robb Baratheon, the former king, Cersei's husband, died and Joffrey stepped into his position, his mother Cersei was assigned as regent, which is someone to take care of royal duties until such a time that a young king is able to make decisions on his own without the guidance of an appointed royal decision maker. Are you connecting the dots? If King Charles III were to die anytime soon, William would most definitely need to be assigned a regent. And if such a position were to go to Camilla and she were to act even remotely similar to Cersei, the United Kingdom would experience unjust violence, poverty, suffering, and not to mention a whole lot of shame surrounding their unofficial appointed ruler. Speaking of Camilla, some of you might remember that she was in fact not the first blushing bride King Charles III took to church, but rather the second. I think. The first was none other than Princess Diana, also known as Lady Di or even the People's Princess. When Diana died, it was due to a tragic car accident that resulted in 3 fatalities, including her own. Well, I use the word accident warily, as I am not so naive as to completely discredit the whispers of the masses who claim that the current king had a hand to play in the young woman's death. If you are thinking I am teetering into the territory of conspiracy theories now, perhaps you're right, but hear me out. Let's say the then prince, now king, did in fact have something to do with the passing of Lady Di. Perhaps upon his own passing, this information would be released to the public. And what would happen then? Well, probably our next point, which is an uprising of hatred towards Camilla. We should know by now not to blame one for another's bad actions simply due to their proximity to the culprit, but I'm thinking British society might throw that sentiment right out of the town car window if they were to discover any possible involvement of Charles in the tragic loss of the People's Princess. And I have no doubt it wouldn't be long before the peoples of the United Kingdom began demanding that Camilla renounce her royal titles and wave goodbye to any affiliations with the royal family. She would be ostracized by the public and the faith in the monarchy would fall. Wow, these segues really write themselves, because starting off our top 3, we have the fall of the monarchy. As things began to unravel behind castle walls, unease would begin to deepen amongst the British people, and perhaps mistrust would form within their minds as well. They would take a look at their non-elected, non-government leaders in their fancy houses and their fancy clothes, juxtaposed against a background of a failing economy, and they might begin to wonder why. For so long have they allowed themselves to blindly follow the word of a king or queen simply because of an outdated loyalty to a diluted bloodline. The streets would be flooded with protesters as the people of the United Kingdom demanded the formation of a democratic government, and perhaps it doesn't stop there, which brings us to our next point. A war to claim the land of the United Kingdom ensues. As the monarchy falls and the country is thrown into chaos, foreign onlookers greedy for the rich soils of the land spot their chance. A crack in the armor of the country's once united front, a disheveled government, and a frightened and confused population. Lucky for the UK, their military is generally self-sufficient, but still, without the hand of the king applying pressure to their backs and the large number of saboteurs entering the country, perhaps they crack too, or are simply no match for the invaders. Violence, again, would flood the streets, and by the end of it all, the world would never be the same. And finally, getting serious now, Illuminati takeover. Some believe the entire world is already controlled by the mysterious organization of cloak-adorning, slightly satanic, all-powerful A-listers, socialites, and all-knowns, and some think it's a load of bull, but let's get back to our roots and use our imagination for a second. Let's say the Illuminati was real, and let's say when the king dies, they decide it's time to come out of the shadows and claim the throne for their own, bringing forth a new age of indoctrination, openly hedonistic values, forced demonic worship, manipulation, and malfeasance. Well, we can imagine Hellfire would see no issue with this, but we would of course expect some form of rebellion. I'm not sure whether or not we would see war or any form of economic collapse within the country, because I guess that would heavily depend on whether or not the Illuminati really does rule the world. So what do you guys think? Alright guys, that's our video for today. Let us know in the comments if you think we got it right, and if not, what do you think would happen? As always, I'm your host, Hannah Thompson, and I'll see you in the next video.